But yeah, that's probably the only reason I can imagine why I would be folding pocket fours there when we're this early in the tournament and I'm looking to play any pair basically to try to flop a set and win a big pot. Alright, so on that flop, obviously we're going to be betting with the king. I'm going to pause it for a second. We have kings, we have overpair to the board. We obviously want to start building a pot because we have a strong hand here. This turn is not exactly the best card to barrel if he does have a hand like ace-8 or ace-queen. We're just going to get called by worse. Well, not necessarily, but against a random player, I'm not really looking to bet that turn. But when he checks the river, I'm definitely going to be betting for value here with the kings because I just think he has a hand like king, queen, or well, he had tens, but I mean, you always have to go for those thin value bets. Just because there's an ace out there doesn't mean that the kings are no longer good there. Like, you have to always be looking to see how somebody's playing their hand and make sure to get the most value for your hand, especially in these big tournaments where you have a huge field to maneuver through. Like, it's pretty much pinnacle to be able to get the most value for every hand that you make, which I've been making a lot of hands so far, so flop top pair, top kicker again here. It's a pretty bad turn though because it completes the gut shots 9-10 straight draw, and if he had queen jack then he made two pair, so I'm not looking to bet that turn at all. And if he bet the turn up, obviously we call. I'm not just gonna fold, but I'm not really looking to build a monster pot once that card comes out. It just kind of hits a lot of the hands that he could have. But when we get that river and we already see him check back the turn, I'm going to go ahead and bet for value again. Pretty sure my top pair, top kicker is good. Not going to be looking to play too many hands blind versus blind with Poker Devil here because, like I said, he is a very strong player and he will have position against me, so I'm not going to really be playing the weaker hands against him. What we just did there was we had a player limp in and just going to isolate from the big blind with a 4 times the big blind raise instead of a 3x, which I usually open for, because I want to make it a little bit more pricey for him to call. Since he's already invested 50 in, I don't want to just have to make him call 100. I'm sure he'll call that every time. But I also am going to have position with a strong hand, so I want to start building a pot right away. Try to get as much value as I can from my hand. And even if I don't flop the best for my ace king, then I could probably still win the pot because I have position. So, and we've been seeing a lot of limping from both these random players, which is usually, like I said, a sign of that they're a little bit weaker. But you never know, like I said earlier. It does help when you're in these big tournaments to basically hit every single flop, as I have so far. Can't really complain. It can be a little bit difficult when you're not making very many hands. To win a tournament like this, you're definitely going to have some luck on your side, have a lot of flips go your way, and not just play your best poker, but I think that it definitely factors in the skill level, especially later on in the tournaments when you can start to really manipulate people because they're playing just to, they're kind of like a lot of the satellite players and randoms are a little bit more scared money because they probably haven't really had a cash anywhere close to what they could get even for making the final table, so they're just going to be hoping to get there and make their way up the pay ladder, so we can take advantage of that, and we will definitely do that later for certain. Right now all we're really doing is trying to pinpoint where the weak points are at the table, see where we're going to be getting most of our chips from. That's usually what I do early in these Sunday major tournaments that have a lot of satellite players. I really look to find out who they are. I don't necessarily look them up like I said earlier, but I do try to identify them just from the way they're playing. Kind of surprised I folded that hand too. Maybe I thought he raised. Like I said, I have a lot of other tables going on at this point, so if anything crazy happens, then that probably is the explanation for it. But I'm definitely going to be looking to get into pots with all these weaker opponents because they are such a great source of chips. It's a little harder to pry chips out of a good regular stack when they have a good idea of what you're trying to do. And so I definitely just look to target the weaker players early on. Because, I mean, usually they're going to end up giving their chips away to somebody. And why not have it be you instead of, like, John Doe over here that could make your life a lot more difficult if they got the chips. I'm just going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit now that there aren't too many exciting hands going on here. There we go. So we had to see that he limped with Queen 10 there, which is a little bit of information. Pick up the pocket kings here. Gonna go ahead and raise it up and get flatted by D-Fish over here in the small blind. It's kind of strange. So we go ahead and make a standard continuation bet. Usually I'm gonna fire out like 2/3 of the pot as a continuation bet, whether I have a hand or whether I don't have a hand. In heads up pots in position on pretty dry boards, I'm usually going to be firing out a continuation bet. More often than not, your opponent is going to miss the flop, and if he's not really looking to, probably slow down his hand a little bit, actually, pause it. But yeah, so they're more often than not going to miss the flop, so it makes the most sense to go ahead and continue the aggression that you showed pre-flop and try to represent a hand. And based on what other cards come out, you can decide whether you want to keep betting or just give up on the hand. So it definitely is the best way to, on most situations, to play a hand. So I basically just check this hand down. This is, I mean, my ace high has definitely got some value. This board gets really gross on the turn when you got 4 cards to a straight. We got a flush draw out there, and I just don't really ever see any need to bet. I don't see bet this flop, actually. I decide not to because it's just so drawy, and this guy's been defending a lot. He could have a lot of hands that would connect with that board. Any, like, suited connectors or like a 9-10, even flopped a open-ended straight draw. Just a lot of hands that could blow me off my hand, which actually could be the best hand with ace high here, so I just opt to check it down and also let them know that I'm not playing garbage. I'm actually having hands when I raise, so that's a little bit of what I'm thinking here. Usually early on I do kind of establish a tighter image for myself. It really helps out in the later stage of the tournament because you can get away with a lot more when the antes and the blinds go up to a point where you actually would want to be able to steal them. Then you'll have the perfect image to be able to do that because you're not going to be getting played back quite as much at when you have already established a pretty tight image for yourself.